So I'm going to start my sermon with a story that will blow the cover off of my wild child persona. I know. Maybe I already have. I spent my Friday afternoons in college, wait for it, visiting residents at a local nursing home. I heard some shock and awe in the back. I wasn't pre-med like most of the other volunteers, and I wasn't earning credits or volunteer hours. I went to visit my friends, people I came to know and look forward to chatting with every week. I learned their life stories, and I shared mine. And like Mary, I also learned how to knit. In retrospect, it all adds up. As a child, my great-aunt Jewel was my pen pal, and I was much more likely to hang out with my Grandpa Jim at family gatherings than my same-age cousins. I've always been a little awkward around my peers, or as some adults used to call me, an old soul. And I've been on the receiving end of so much life wisdom and a broader perspective from the elders in my life. Our families, as we talked about during Together Time, are the natural place where intergenerational living and connections are nurtured. And more research is beginning to illuminate the unique value of intergenerational friendships and relationships outside of our family units. You can see here on the slide findings from an AARP survey of adults with intergenerational friends, and it shows the benefits for both the older and the younger member of the friendship pair. At the top for both is helping to see things from another perspective. How relevant and important for this particular moment in our lives. I also love that for both groups, the friendship made them feel valued, and it gave them greater appreciation for their own life experiences. We can also see that there are areas with distinct differences in the value gained. Those with an older friend found that that person served as a role model and an inspiration for them, and those with a younger friend were more likely to feel the friendship boosted their energy and kept them up on current trends. There's also growing evidence of the value of co-locating services and supports for children and older adults. Hospice of the Valley here in Phoenix has a dementia care and education campus spearheaded by a member of our own UUCP community that provides care for individuals living with dementia and their family members, and is also paired with an on-site preschool. Research shows that children and adults benefit from these intergenerational spaces, and the vast majority of Americans think that intergenerational activities can decrease loneliness, also particularly relevant for this time. Despite these many benefits, we have few opportunities to form intergenerational friendships. In that same AARP survey, the most common places to meet an older or younger friend were an individual's workplace, neighborhood, faith community, and mutual friends. So before this begins to feel like a research lecture, let me bring it back to UUCP, to our principles and to our mission. Remember, faith communities were one of the 4 most common places where intergenerational friendships are formed. Ours is a faith community that is continuously striving to be an age-inclusive one, and there's much more to be done. We have all generations here in one space during service, which is a far cry from the quiet room behind glass that I was exiled to in my Catholic church when I was growing up. They didn't mind seeing me and the other children, but they certainly didn't want to hear us. And they were not fostering my voice, the voice of other children, the way I see happening here with our children and youth at UUCP. When I first entered this sanctuary as a 28-year-old, I was new to Phoenix and desperate to find my people. And to be honest, I wasn't sure I had when I first walked through those doors. As I looked around, most folks were significantly older than me on the whole. I still remember the joys and sorrows that were shared during that first service I attended. Someone was recovering from a hip replacement surgery, and it felt so far removed from my own life experiences. I'll admit that I kept coming back early on because I got connected with the young adult small group, several of the members who were participating when I was there here in the sanctuary today. And it was where I found community within this community. We find the places where we're comfortable, and it can take time and some external motivation to break out of them. It was my same-aged peers that brought me in the door, but it's my intergenerational friendships at UUCP that have kept me here long term. Two have been especially meaningful for me, and I share a bit about these relationships with their permission. You heard a little bit from John Reed earlier, so I'll just reiterate, from my perspective, John Reed and I were connected in those very early days of the pandemic to check in with one another, and before we connected that way, we had only chatted briefly once in person, and I honestly wasn't sure what to expect or what we might talk about during those phone calls. Very quickly, however, our Wednesday night calls became an anchor for me during the isolation of that period of lockdown. It was a gift to get to know someone new during that very insular time. We now share meals together regularly, and he's my outdoor mentor, encouraging me through my first solo camping trip, sharing his knowledge of local trails, and helping me to prepare for a big hike this fall. As a second example, also in 2020, I signed up for Beloved Conversations, a virtual curriculum of self-study and group discussions designed to support participants to embody racial justice as a spiritual practice. I had the opportunity to do this hard, important work with Donna Featherston, Bunny Hodas, Jan Kaplan, and Kathy Kim here from UUCP. And let me tell you, we went deep and fast. With more years of life experience than me, these women helped me to zoom out from my own often myopic lens and situate myself and my experiences in the broader arc of both history and my own life. In turn, I was able to share what was going on from my perspective, some unique reflections of how I was grappling with white supremacy in my workplace. We all learned from the different perspectives in our small group. We're now about 2 years out from that formal programming, and this group of women, whose friendship I feel so deeply in my soul, continues to meet regularly. We're still sharing resources and sparking conversations on racial justice, and we're also celebrating our varied life milestones and achievements. Apparently, it took a pandemic and a racial reckoning to push me out of my same age comfort zone, and I am so glad that it did. I think I've mentioned up here before how I surprised myself and everyone who knows me when I decided to put down roots here in Arizona. And one of the main driving factors for that was that I have a stronger sense of community here than anywhere else I've ever lived. Part of that community is certainly my friends of a similar age and stage, but a big part of that is that I've been able to build an intergenerational web of support, not unlike a family, here at UUCP. With my blood relatives thousands of miles away, so many of you have become my aunts and uncles here in Phoenix. So how do we create more opportunities to build these relationships and open our doors and our hearts to children, youth, and adults at all life stages? How do we live into our mission of being radically inclusive? I have a few ideas, and I'm really excited to hear yours as well. First, I think we must recognize that ageism is one of the isms that we must seek to dismantle, both within UUCP and within our broader society. We must acknowledge, difficult as it is, that at some point in time, people of all ages have experienced marginalization here in our beloved community. We all need different things to participate fully, and sometimes those things are at odds with one another. And yet we're here. We've been having conversations about how to make this a truly multi-generational space where all feel engaged and included, and we have more work to do. Importantly, I can only share from my own experiences, and I want to acknowledge that I am not of the demographic that typically experiences the marginalization of ageism in our society. We need to hear all voices in this conversation, which leads to my second point. We must seek the perspectives of and truly listen to those in different generations. I have been in several conversations at UUCP over the years about how to bring in more young adults into our community. In one recent example, I was the only young adult in the room, and I put that in quotes because I'm beginning to feel that UUCP might be one of the only places where I can get away with calling myself a young adult. The meeting for this particular conversation, the meetings were often scheduled at a time that I couldn't attend, so my voice went unheard. As we strive for radical inclusion by age, we must take a nothing about us without us approach, that authentically partners with the individuals and communities we're striving to better include. We must also remember that no one voice can represent all experiences within one group. For example, my experience as a young adult at UUCP is very different from the experience of someone who is a young person of color or a young parent. We can also create communities within this community, with plenty of opportunities for us to come together. For me, that was the young adult small group that helped me to get my footing and gain the comfort level I needed to branch out here. Last year, Reverend Christine created a space to reignite that young adult small group, and we have more opportunities to nurture these types of spaces for all ages, stages, and life experiences. And at the same time, we can continue to foster opportunities to come together across around shared interests, a meal, a discussion group that cuts across ages and generations. And finally, we must take a risk and step outside of our comfort zones. Making new friends is hard. Making new friends who are different from us can feel even harder. It takes time, proximity, finding shared ground, and having repeated, deepening interactions. As an intergenerational faith community, we already have a head start. We have proximity, and we have the opportunity to come together repeatedly. We also have a strong foundation of shared values. We have so much to gain: a deeper understanding of ourselves and others, social connection in a time when that's so desperately needed, and we have so much to give: a different perspective, hard-earned wisdom, our time, our energy, our love. May we commit ourselves to the personal and communal tasks of deepening our relationships and connections with one another across generations. May we celebrate our differences in life experiences and learn from each other's wisdom. May we support each individual to flourish here at UUCP by focusing our attention and our resources on our mission of radical inclusion. May we enjoy one another, our friends, our family here at UUCP. May it be so.